You're welcome. Anytime. Anytime I can help. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So now, as you can see, we have a Q&A for our expert panel. Please, any questions you guys had in the Q&A, please post them up. We hope that our speakers are ready because we are going to be inquiring. We're going to be asking a lot of questions in just a short while. So I'm hoping that you guys literally write down everything you've heard from all of our keynotes, not all of our keynote speakers, there's only one, from our keynote speakers and all of our subsequent speakers. I hope that you have absolutely just taken on all this information. And ladies and gentlemen, I know you're probably wondering, maybe if this is your first time, you're probably trying to understand, like, how do I join SAPIN? There's so much fruitful information. There was so much just knowledge shared. You can absolutely join us at www.joinsapin.com/connect. And you can literally choose as to which division you want. You can do foundation, intermediate, professional. So for example, let's say you choose the professional, right? You literally have access to coaches, you have goal settings, you have support, you have access to VIP and exclusive events that are part and form of the Property Academy and also the SA Fundamental courses. You also have reporting with Lightstone and TPN. There's just so much value in each division, but this is literally an example of if you wanted to join the professional membership, because it has so many benefits, guys. And you have like a monthly lunchtime, which with virtual Q&A, and you literally have access to all of these platforms. So for example, you have a VIP premier events, you have Lightstone property reports that are included, you have mastermind, advanced webinars, free TPN, just like deals on deals on deals on deals on deals on deals on deals. I should make a song. I feel like I would be like a platinum recording artist. It's called Deals on Deals by SAPIN. Anywho, we are now going to be talking about what I talked about earlier, Investor of the Year Award. Guys, I said bachelor unit. We're not even asking for like multiple rooms. We're just saying one unit, just a square box, and you got it through the craziest way. We want to hear about it, and we absolutely encourage you guys to enter because it is open to every single person. Even if you have one bachelor unit, to the guy that's developing a mall, or the girl, first of all, because girls do it too, that's developing, a huge development or everything like that, please enter today. This will be in, I think it's September, I stand corrected, COVID pending. I will be there looking amazing. And my ever so illustrious waiter, aka Andrew, will also be there. So we hope absolutely to see you guys at the Investors of the Year Award. So now our upcoming events, we are going to be having a free webinar, which will be discussing property leads while you are at your 9-to-5 jobs. Because a lot of people don't have the luxury to just be like, I'm following my dream. I'm going to go be a property entrepreneur. You have, bills, you have things that you want to do. So to start off your journey, still working 9-to-5, still having a Monday to Friday job, we have a free webinar for that. So the next one is learn how to generate a cash flow. And all of these, by the way, are free. And then we have a installment sale agreement deals. So these are some of the things that we are going to be having. So our next national events, the same one that you guys absolutely I'm joined with this one, which is so welcomed. It is the SAPIN National event. The next one is going to be on the 21st of April. I will be there. But like we said, when I said if you join the professionals, you will have premier events. That one is going to be on the 10th of March. It's much smaller. It's way more intimate. So you have more time to engage with keynote speakers. You have more time to engage with property investors and entrepreneurs. So you have more time to have a one-on-one basis and engage and learn knowledge. So with that, further ado, as you can see, you can go to upcoming events and literally it will give you a drop-down box of all the single things that we are going to be doing as SAPIN. Next up, what I want to now encourage, like I said earlier on, I want a panel discussion and I want you guys to ask questions because this is the whole premise of why we do these events. We want you guys to inquire. We want you guys to ask. And so as we go on, I'm going to be starting it off with, let's see, with Orabile. And she says, in my understanding, you can still get property transfer in your name from the start, right? Isn't that the krijgsbrief method? Pardon me if I missed the spelling. Pardon me if I missed the pronunciation. I have no idea what a that. I have no idea what a krijgsbrief method is. but I'm not sure if any of the panelists would like to just hop onto that question.
Kali, yes, I will. Sorry, Bruno, I know you'd also love to come in here, and please do. But yeah, the answer basically is the example that I showed, there was no bank bond over the property. So it's called a custings brief. So the property actually registers into my name or my company's name at the beginning, and then I pay it off over a period of time. Thanks, Bruno. Did you want to add something there?
Yeah, so this is the one I touched on right at the end of my talk. So the one concern that we're having at the moment with some custings briefs is the uncertainty as to whether the National Credit Act applies to mortgage bonded agreements, because the National Credit Act does state that it wants to automatically apply to it, and the question of whether you're charging interest or not doesn't really come into play. I still feel that there may be an interpretation, but the problem is that one of my colleagues did correctly point out that it does look like the National Credit Act, unfortunately, and probably unintentionally, cast the net very wide to cover custom briefs, effectively meaning that if a seller sells you the property and you take transfer immediately and you register a mortgage bond in favor of the seller, this could be a situation where the National Credit Act applies. That being said, bear in mind, and this isn't legal advice, it's more pragmatic fact, that it's normally the purchaser that has the protection of the National Credit Act. So if you as the purchaser don't ever call up the protection of the Credit Act, then theoretically speaking, the transaction would still proceed. It would be successful because no one would make any issues of it.
Okay, fantastic. I hope that answers your questions. I actually just learned something real quickly. So thank you so much for that question, Orabile. Next one is from Carlo. Let's see over here. Okay, so Carlo asked, an article told me NCA apply if we buy properties more than 500,000. Is this really so?
Do you want me to take this one?
You absolutely can. I can literally fall on anybody because there's no specific person.
So that's a very, very old article. I'm under the impression, I think it must have been 2016, the position did change. So prior to 2016, the National Credit Act had a certain threshold saying that any transaction under 500,000 Rand, there was another threshold, but in relation to the 500,000, any transaction less than 500,000 would not require the credit provider to register as a credit provider, nor would the NCA apply. Anything above 500,000 would obviously require the registration. That has since become zero, basically meaning that every time that money is lent, you should actually register, and it's an arm's length transaction. So obviously it doesn't apply to transactions between spouses and family members and even intergroup transactions, but most other transactions where a loan is given would require registration in terms of the National Credit Act.
So that's on the one side, and then over and above that, when you look at bond financing from that perspective, the National Credit Act will be applicable with any personal name transaction, but entities are exempted from it, subject to a couple of conditions. Like if a company has an asset value of more than a million Rand, it would be exempted from it. Similarly, so a trust with one trustee plus an entity acting as independent trustee, or two trustees plus an independent trustee, it will be exempted, which also makes it a little bit easier to get financing through those entities and blur the lines in terms of where your personal affordability ends and that of the trust begins, or company for that matter.
Okay, fantastic. That is awesome. Okay, Orabile also asked, is the footnote clause a standard clause, or can it be mandated and negotiated otherwise? I think that might be for you, Bruno.
All right, it can be. It's not a requirement. There's no piece of legislation that actually requires it be in any agreement, so you can delete it from the agreement. In fact, what you tend to find nowadays with our consumer laws is that there's a move against having footstoots provision, because footstoots means sales as is. Basically meaning that a poor innocent purchaser could land up with a property that has a million defects and they were none the wiser. And then the seller hides behind this provision to protect itself. So now in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, typically you'd find that there is protection, basically saying that you can't have a footstoots provision, that if a property is sold and there's defects, the purchaser does in fact have recourse. Also, even without the Consumer Protection Act, our common law did say that if a seller actually hides a defect, but knew about it, but failed to disclose it, the purchaser also has recourse. So there is a move away from your typical footstoots provision.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So this one, I think it might be like a Jade or a Heron question. This says, how do you identify the property in the beginning?
Okay, if I can answer that, the critical thing to keep in mind with an installment sale agreement is that you first need to identify a good property investment, and then determine whether you want to buy it with an installment sale or a mortgage sale or a back-to-back or rent-to-rent or lease agreement. But the first principle is the deal must make sense. And then you start to look at how do you going to buy it. So it's not how do you find an installment sale agreement. Run the numbers, look at the deal must work. The question is just how you're going to buy it. And then you can say, okay, I want to buy this one with an installment sale, this one with a mortgage sale, this one I just want to flip with a back-to-back deal. And then the rest of the thing is history. You just negotiate the deal once you find it. If you really want to find an installment sale agreement, if you are adequate, that is what you want to find, then you, again, run the numbers. You take a Lightstone report, you see when was the bond registered. If the bond was registered in the last 5 or 7 years, then it's a high possibility that there's a big outstanding bond, and then you go and offer more or less that outstanding bond amount. Easy.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that, Heron. And then I have another subsequent question for you. It says, Heron, what happens when the interest rates goes up on an ISA? Do you essentially plan for a 2 to 4% jump and don't take on properties that cannot handle that much runaway?
Yeah, so what I always say in the course, the guys that do the course is life happens. If the interest rate goes up, it goes up for everyone. So you have to count that into your calculations. But what I always say to the guys doing my course is, if you don't have cash in your bank, don't go and buy property. End of story. If you don't have cash in your bank, go and do sourcing of deals. Get money, cash in your bank, and then go and buy a property. Because with cash in your bank, you can, you know, when the interest rate goes up, you can take that. When the tenant don't pay it, you can take that. When the oven breaks, you can pay that. If you don't have cash in the bank, the first thing you want to do is you want to learn how to do this, and then source it to someone who's got cash in the bank, and you get sourcing fee. Work through the brokerage, get sourcing fee, sourcing fee, sourcing fee, pay off your bad debt. Once you've got cash in the bank, you don't have bad debt, then go and do as many installment sales as you want, because you can take that knock when it comes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Heron. And that actually reminds me of something one of my mentors once says nobody goes grocery shopping with no money. Like, you don't go into the sugar aisle and go, one day I'll come back to purchase you. You go when you have money. So that actually just echoes onto that. Yes. The next, that was from Yaku de Deutsch. Thank you so much for that. The next one we have is from Zukele. Says, I went to view a potential cash cow today. Hey, good for you. And I'm interested in purchasing it through an installment sale agreement. Can Bruno assist after myself and the seller agree to the terms? I can answer that right now. Yes, for a fee. But Bruno, can you assist?
Good answer. I think you covered it. So after the terms are agreed to, we can help. Obviously, just bear in mind that The terms need to comply with the law. It needs to be within the parameters, of registration and protection. So unfortunately, if somebody agrees to something that for some reason is unlawful or impossible, we can't really put that in the contract. But provided that you've listened to Heron, you've listened to Christian, Jade, myself, everyone that's spoken about this, by the time you're done with this evening, you should at the very least be able to negotiate the basic fundamental terms, and then the rest, yes, you would just leave up to us.
Yes, I think if I can just add to that, when she said cash cow, the first thing I was thinking was Multilet. And I just want to highlight this because this is so powerful. We had a breakaway the other day with a mastermind group of people, which was brilliant. The number one discussion was, what's the quickest way to replace your income with property income through rent income? And there was no question about it. Multilets. You buy one big house, you subdivide it into multiple units, and you sublet it to different families. That's the quickest way to replace your income with rent income. Because even with these installment sales, you make 90 Rand a month on a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit. That's not a lot of money. You're not going to replace your income quickly. You're going to make wealth one day. So multi-lets are the way to quickly replace your income. Well, I think the quickest way to replace your income with rent income. But what is the problem with a multi-let? Why isn't everyone going out and buying multi-lets? The answer is because banks, most banks are struggling to approve finance on multi-lets. But with an installment sale agreement, all you need to do is solve the problem of the seller. What is this problem of the seller? The seller has got this house, which is giving him rent income. He's living off that rent income, and he cannot sell this property. And everyone dies at some point. So I went to another property the other day. I went there. The man is really old. He's really sick. He struggled to breathe while I was there. His wife was there. She was old. She was worried because if the husband in whose name this property is registered passes away, what's going to happen? The bank is going to come. Well, the property was paid up. So what's going to happen? This property must be transferred to someone else. And then what? And then what? And then what? So they wanted to sell this property, get the money from this property, and live happily ever after the husband passes away, which will not be with respect in many years from now. And she then maybe wants to move to the coast or to her children. And she doesn't want to stay in this property and manage all these tenants. So it's a nightmare in which they are living. And they want to sell this property to someone who's going to take it and get rid of their problem. And I went there and I said, okay, let's talk. And I first listened to all these stories. And then I said, okay, I will buy this, but I'm going to buy this with an installment sale agreement. Do you know what is an installment sale agreement? And they said, no. Now remember, they don't owe anything to the bank. So this is a normal installment sale agreement. And then we started talking and talking. And I spent most of the afternoon there. And we are still busy talking. But at some point, they will see the value and most likely will do the deal.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Heron. That is actually like probably a brilliant deal, but you're a master of this. I see that Orabile, Queen, and Carlo also have questions. What I am going to say is that upon me asking these questions, I advise to please continue asking these questions, but please do them on Discord because we're going to be moving to that side as I need to humbly very soon bid you guys a farewell. So I don't want anybody to feel like they were left out and I didn't ask their questions. So your questions will still be answered. However, they will be answered on Discord. What I do suggest is that I will put these questions from Orabile and Queen. So Orabile asks, from where I come from, the properties in my area are mostly bond/paid off. Will that make an ISA more efficiency in such a case? And then Queen asks, good evening. I have spotted a vandalized property that can easily be flipped. However, very difficult to trace the owner who is deceased. Can you advise other tools? And then Carlo asked, when there is a strong financial statement for a multi-let, then is the bank more happy to fund multi-lets? I think this one from Carlo, not that I'm skipping Orabile and Queen, but because Miguel has a more insight on this. Miguel, This might actually be for you. They ask, when there is a strong financial statement for a multi-let, then is the bank more happy to fund the multi-lets?
Hi there, Kali. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so it's always a tough one. I often get investors coming to me and talking to me about financing multi-lets. Banks struggle to finance multi-lets. And a multi-let is where, you know, I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house and I chop that in half into 2 dwellings and convert the garage into an apartment and any other space I've got under roof. Banks struggle with that. 2 reasons: that those changes are not always legal, and there'll be a problem with town planning. So that's the first thing to address. But beyond that, just having multiple families, multiple family units on a property just does cause problems for a bank should there be a challenge down the road in terms of payments, etc. So banks generally do not finance multi-lets. What can be done though is where you can find a property where the building plans already allow for an additional cottage and where there's some flexibility in terms of how you use the buildings. That's something to consider. But really do get some advice as to how far you can go before you can no longer go back to your bank for refinancing, or you'll have difficulty in selling the property later.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And as I stated before, for Orabile and Queen, we have good. So I think this one might be for Bruno. It says, good evening. I've spotted a vandalized property that can easily be flipped. However, very difficult to trace as the owner is deceased. Can you advise other tools? So Bruno, I think, have you ever dealt with a property that has a deceased owner?
Yes, so it's not the easiest thing to do. Unfortunately, the reason being that, so tracing the owner isn't particularly difficult because using the deeds office, using the property descriptions, you can typically trace at least the name of the owner and their ID number. Once you have this in place, there are certain tracing software that you can actually use to trace address, telephone numbers, that sort of thing. That being said, some owners you cannot find. Some owners we even know have moved overseas, and you won't be able to trace them. The phone numbers won't work. So all of that is for naught. They've pretty much abandoned their properties. So that's a very special scenario that needs to be dealt with. It's exceptional. In the case of a deceased estate, the difficulty is that as soon as you involve the master's office, you start finding inefficiencies in the way that the process is followed, because the master's office doesn't have a centralized database that you can just tap into, and you can find a person's name and find who is appointed as executor. But there are ways of doing this. When you use the government gazette, for example, you can make certain inquiries at the master's office in the particular area, and you can do a couple of searches, and you are bound to find who is appointed as an executor, and with them you'd be able to negotiate. It is a bit more effort, and I typically find that when you go knocking at the door, you'd find family members that would point you in the right direction, or you'd find estate agents who've been appointed by the executor. So that's how people normally access these type of deals. But if you're looking to deal with the executor directly, it will take just a little bit of work and research.
Okay, fantastic, awesome. And the last question for tonight, it is, from where I come from, the properties in my area are mostly bond-free / paid off. Will this make the ISA more efficiency in such a case?
Yeah, I think when the property is paid off, it is more difficult to negotiate the deal because you now need to understand that this person selling the property, if the property is worth R1 million and they want to sell it to someone else, they are expecting to get R1 million cash in their bank now. And they probably already decided what they're going to do with that R1 million now. So if you then do an installment sale agreement and you pay it off over 5 years, they're not having that R1 million, that golden egg in their bank account now. So it becomes more difficult. So the first question you need to ask them is, okay, if I buy this property for R1 million, what are you going to do with the money? Are you going to invest it? and get 10% interest or 6% interest per year and live off the interest, or you're going to spend R1 million. If they say no, we'll probably invest it somewhere because we need to get monthly income from that, then you can do an installment sale, because then you can say, okay, what amount do you need per month? Let me pay you that amount per month, and we do an installment sale. And then you can offer them a little bit more than what they would have received if they invested that money at 6% or something. So that's a bit more tricky to negotiate, but it can be done. But it's not that common to do that like this. So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that, Heron. And ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we are still continuing this discussion. So should you guys want to have, further discussions or engagements, or have questions that just popped up now, by all means, please go onto Discord. Our panels will be there, just literally answering any just tidbits and questions. And for the, the lady that wanted to know how to contact a deceased person, you can absolutely contact Bruno, and the gentleman who point blank asked if they can get services from Bruno. He will be there to discuss all of these things with you. Now, I would like to humbly call on my waiter for being so gracious and letting me host this event. I am so grateful for you guys. It was an awesome crowd. Thank you so much. And please let me know if I did an awesome job.
It was great, wasn't it, ladies and gents? In the chat box, tell us how great was Kali. And thank you, Heron, Christian, Miguel, Bruno, Shilly Boy, the whole team. It was amazing. I was taking notes, I was listening. So thank you to the whole team and to everyone. Remember, go out there, take action. Join the professional membership, join the mastermind, get the support and help that's needed to help you execute those deals. And for those of you that have joined us for the first time, that are perhaps starting out in property, or you have a few properties, you may just want to join me this Saturday. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, just get hold of Alani at the SA Property Network, and she'll tell you more about that. But now it's time for networking, is it not?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Fantastic.
Please, I would love to see you guys on Discord. Thank you so much.
See you all in a few minutes.
Good night.